Okay, hi, Assalamualaikum, and very good morning. So this is our last video for Lex 2047 Poetic Society, and we are from group 46. And before we started, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Humaizat Akmal binti Zaini, and my matrix number is 192767.
My name is Siti Zulaiha binti Muhammad Shafi'i and my matrix number is 203688.
My name is Nur Nabila Huda binti Rahman. My matric number is 200791.
My name is Siti Nahanisa binti Abduraza and my matrix number is 201729.
My name is Farah Adila binti Ahmad Marzuki and my matric number is 203699.
My name is Isma Husna binti Ishaq. My matric number is 203041.
Okay, so we're done introduce ourselves. So for the first thing, we're going to review all the four poems that we've been done. So who's going to be the first reviewer?
I think it should be from the first group.
Yeah, supposedly. So for the first theme, which is poverty, the first poem is from group 1. So in my point of view, this poem is I think it's a really good in conveying the theme poverty because I don't know why, but it's much simpler and easier to be understand. It's understandable for every single. Every person could relate to this poem. So I think this poem is quite nice, and I think it can be the the most favorite from this theme. What about others?
I think it's Nabila, you want to go first?
Go first, Isma.
Okay. I think this poem is a good one. Because I think this is a good poem because if we want to share this poem to other people, they will easily understand and can imagine what the first feel and looks like. So I think it's a good poem and it's easy to understand.
From my point of view, I also agree with Hanisa and Isma too. And this poem also have covered it has picture of what is poverty, and it also is my favorite poem too for this theme. Yeah.
I agree with Nabila, Isma and Hanisa because I think that the poem is very good in conveying the message of poverty itself, and the flow of the poem is very well done, and the repetitive words, I think it's good in emphasizing the meaning of the poem.
For my opinion, I agree with all of you because it's quite, as we have been discussed before, it have the explicit content, which is it is easy to understand by the words, and also the message is delivered well. And for me as an audience, I quite love this poem because I understand it well, and also the message it get to me.
For me, this poem is quite good because it covers about the poverty and about the parents searching for food for their children and so on. So I think this poem is quite good overall.
So let's review next poem. What do you guys think about this poverty poem from second group?
I think this poem is also good because it have the implicit and explicit, which is but not but it's still if we read this poem to the audience, they maybe not get the message, like not easily get the message, because it also contain the implicit content. So but I think it's also a good one because the design also for me is portray the poverty. That is my opinion. How about you guys?
I also think that it's a good poem. It For me, it can convey the message of poverty, but it is slightly, like Isma said, like have implicit meaning. So maybe people will have a difficulty in understanding the message. But I think like the flow of the poem is quite good, and overall is it is a good poem. What about you guys?
For me, basically, the message of this poem is quite the same as the first poem, but it is more complicated and it has more implicit and explicit content. Also, it is a bit hard to understand, but overall, the flow of the poem is good. Hanisa, what about you?
Yes, I agree with Isma, Farah, and also Zuleha. The choices of words here main the vital role for this poem. So if the person does not understand the meaning, so they cannot get the message from this poem. So I think it's also a good poem. It's just that the matter of words it's been chosen. So what about others?
I agree with all of you. This poem is good, but it's just with the choices of word, the vocab is a bit high, so it makes it difficult for us to understand. I also like for the like I don't know the design is also portray the sadness in because poverty is sadness, right? So the design really portray the sadness of the poem. Yeah.
So actually for me, this poem is a really good one, and it's beautiful because it's really convey the meaning of poverty and how poverty works in our real life, like what they're feeling, what they endure throughout their life. So actually this one is really convey the message because it portray all the emotion about the poverty itself. For me, it is a beautiful poem.
So we're moving on to the next theme, which is human right. So who want to start first? Okay, lah, Mila. So for the first poem for this theme, which is the title is Right to Equality. So for me, it's really explained well about the uh, theme human right, but maybe for some reason is the person does not understand the meaning of the words. It might be hard for them, but the flow and also the read I mean it's not the rhythm, it's the flow lah. The flow of the poem is really beautiful and I think it's really good one. So what about others?
Uh, Mai, you want to go first?
Yes, I actually agree with Hanisa. It has a really good flow in this poem, but the problem is the words are really hard to understand. So maybe some of audience cannot get the real message, but then it's still a beautiful poem because it's conveyed the really meaning of the humans, right? Okay, that's all.
I agree with Hanisa and Humaizatul because I think it's a good poem, but it's really hard for to me to understand actually. Uh, I also need some explanation to get all the message. So for the flow and overall it's good, but the problem is the only like we it's not easy for me to understand the poem. How do you guys think?
I do agree with Isma, Humayzatul, and Narhanisa because actually this poem is good for its flow, but this poem does not really has the implicit content. Only the vocabulary is too high to be understood by some people. So I think that's all from me. What about Nabila and Farah?
I think this is a very good poem because it shows the struggle of it shows the meaning of human rights in the poem. It covers a lot of topics about human rights, such as discrimination, uh, double standards between women and men, so beauty standards and all of that. So overall, I think it is a really good poem. And even the flow of the poem itself is very good. So what about you, Nabila?
For me, I agree with Farah's point that this poem cover all the issue, all the problems that related to human rights, and it's just that like Zulekha said about the vocabulary is too high, but I think when the vocabulary is high and the meaning we do not understand much, so it makes me eager to understand, to know the meaning behind the sentences, and so that I can understand the full script of poem. So for me, yeah, it's really good poem too.
So let's moving on to the next poem, which is the poem created by second group.
I will go first, okay? For in my opinion, this poem is also a good one, especially if we want to publish it to the social media right now, because we also have the issue about the Palestine right now. So I think if we need to publish this one, so it's gonna be like a lot of people will understand what is the meaning of this, right? And this poem also uh, um uh this poem also have a different meaning from the other one, because it's about the freedom. The freedom is also the human rights. This which is this message didn't have in the first poem of human rights, and the flow is also nice to me. And but maybe the it's contain some of implicit, I think. So it might be a little hard for the audience to understand. That's all for me. What do you guys think?
I agree with Isma about this poem. It's really relate to our current situation where is the war is still happening in Palestine, where they got beaten by Israel. So I think that this poem is really good in conveying that the freedom is also a human right. So human needs the freedom too in their life. So I think the flow, the meaning besides this poem is also good in conveying the message, but it's just maybe if it's not being explained, so it's really hard for them to understand. Okay, next.
Okay, so for me, it's this power is quite different compared to the previous one, because this previous one is explaining the everything about the human right, but this one is talk only focusing on the freedom and also the war that happening at as we know the current situation based on Palestine and Israel. So this poem is actually a good one because it's really convey the message about the people that wants the freedom that all the people, all the person in this world must have. This poem is really convey that message. So what's about you guys?
For me, I think the flow is beautiful and it has a very sad meaning. The poem relates to this current situation in Palestine, just like what Isma has said before, and the message is delivered well, but only some lines that are hard to understand. Overall, this is a good poem since it talks about the war and the freedom.
In my opinion, this poem is good because this convey about the personal spirit to free his country from the war, and I like this poem because when I read the poem, I feel like I have the feeling that I have to protect my country. Maybe not because of war in Malaysia, but for the other like toxic mentality or about religion, about our race. And then, but it's just that the vocab too is also high, and I don't really quite understand if we didn't discuss it. Yeah.
I agree with all of you. I think this poem is a good poem in conveying the message of human rights about freedom itself. However, the words I think is probably like hard for people to understand the message. So overall, it is a really good poem about freedom. So I think that people should be more aware about this type of poem that focusing on just specifically on freedom of human rights.
Okay, so now we are going to choose the best among the best. So who's gonna start first?
I will go first then. Yeah, I think in my opinion, for based on the four poems that we have, I would like to choose the first one, which is the poverty from the first book, because I think that poem uh portray all the aspect of the poverty. The poem also have a beautiful meaning, which is people can easily to understand about poverty. I think that's all. How about others?
Yes, I agree with Isma. Maybe because we are too attached to this poem, but when it comes to in terms of in simplicity, we love some simple thing. We don't like some complex thing. So that's why I think the first poem also is the most. I mean, like the most. Is the poem that I like the best one, because it's just that I am attached to this poem because it's simple, and also the choice of words also really easy to be understood, and also yeah, the flow, like Farah said just now, like the flow is also beautiful, and it convey all the messages that need to be in this theme. That's my opinions. But if when it comes to complexity, maybe other poem also win. What about others?
In my opinion, I'm torn between the poem about human equality or about the poverty by the first group. So, but when I think about it again, I think I choose the poverty one from the first group. Uh, I actually want to pick the human equality, but because it covers a lot about human rights, about the issues related in our current society. But for the overall poem, I think the best one is the poverty from the first group, because it is really good in conveying the message and it's very direct. It is easy for people to understand the poem. What about the others?
At first, I think the first poem is very nice and very good, since it is very simple and very easy to understand, and also it conveys the message of poverty very well, since it can relate to some current situation in Malaysia, because people lost their job because of this pandemic. But the poem Right to Equality, which is from Human Rights Team, caught my attention more because it tells us about the skin colors, women's right, and beauty standard, which it covers all the situation of human rights. since currently people are still talking about these topics, I think this is good. This is a good poem to open their eyes, to change their mindset, to be like more open-minded. That's all from me. What about others?
For me, I'm also puzzled to choose between the first poem about the poverty and the human rights from the group one, but I choose the human rights from the first group because as Zulaiha said that it cover most of the issue in the human rights, and um, it opens our eyes to solve the issue like in Malaysia. We know that sometime maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago that there are something viral things about a student has been erased by his teacher. So I think and it's related with the woman's right. And I think when people start read this poem, it will help them to understand that everyone has their own right to have the freedoms to do anything what they want, and do not cross over their, and they don't have any limit.
For me, I personally love the poem from Team Human Rights, which is the right to equality. Even though many of you guys are giving the review about the problems that the use of the words that really hard to understand, but then it actually really message, which is it portray, it elaborate all the things that related to the human right and how and the situations about the human right happens close around us. So basically, this poem is actually can really be understand when it can explained well by the other people. So basically, I love the poem Right to Equality and I choose that one.
Okay, so now we have a really good competitive competition here
Yeah.
between the first poem of
Poem.
Team Poverty and also Human Rights. So how do we gonna decide this?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna change my mind now. Okay, after I listen to Humai, Nabila and Zulaiha opinion, I think for Malaysia right now, we really have the problem about the human right now, the human equality. Since the poem also contain the message of the people judgment toward other people and about the skin colors and so on. I think the first poem of the human right is a good one. So how about Farah and Hanisa? Do you guys also change
Yeah,
your mind?
I think it's yeah, that poem based on what I chose earlier is because of the simplicity. But then when it comes to complexity, I think yeah, right to equality is not that complex. It's just that we need to learn more about the high vocabulary. So I think yeah, it's really conveying a good message about yeah our current issue where all about the judgmental based on the physical, the color skins, and also the yeah the race. I think it's really good in conveying human right messages. So what about Farah?
I agree with all of you. Like I just said before, like I'm torn between to choose between the two poems. The first poem about poverty and the first poem about human rights. Because I think the poem about the human rights is very good because it covers a lot of topics. So after Himaizatu, Zulaiha and Nabila explain about why they chose that poem, I think that I'm more convinced that the human rights the first poem about human rights is the best poem out of all 4 poems.
We have come out with the best poem that we all gonna choose, right?
Yeah,
Which is what,
right to
Hamza?
equality. Right to equality from the first group. And Team Human Rights. Yeah.
Congratulations. So this is the end of our video for today, which is our last video also. So selamat Hari Raya everyone.
In conclusion, based on all the votes that we've been done before, we basically finally we agree that the human rights team and the first poem that titled Right to Equality is the best one among the rest. So that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Dah.
Thank you everyone.
Bye. Selamat Raya.
Thanks everyone.